Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to go over Ezekiel, certain portions of the book of Ezekiel, and look at the Institute Manual. And we're going to cover things like this: Ezekiel's prophecy of the Dead Sea being healed. I've done a number of videos about this, but it's been a while, and I don't know if this is already on your radar. Put it in the comments below if you already knew about this or you didn't. But here's one story that's really interesting as we think about this prophecy. This is from Israel 365 News. Prophecy appears. Rivers flow from Jerusalem into Dead Sea. Of course, with fresh water, right? And there's more stories I want to cover with you, but I'm going to wait till we get to that part of the video where we're talking about that prophecy. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the third temple, Ezekiel's vision of the temple of Jerusalem in the last days. So we're going to do all those things. And by the way, we're going to go over a few Israel 365 articles. I wanted to remind you, or let you know if you didn't know, I am partnered with them on a few different things. So if you go, like you're watching the video, if you go down to the description box, there's a lot of things in the description box. Okay, so first, I have these 3 charities, which actually I think the third one is over now because I tried to pull it up and it doesn't pull up anymore. So I guess they're done with that. But I have these 2 charities that I'm supporting. And then I have this 75 Hebrew words you need to understand the Bible. That's the name of the book. You can get $10 off with the code Christian. And then I also do Artza, not through all these are through Israel 365. And then I also do Artza boxes. Let me just show you really quick. And by the way, with the Artza boxes, you can get 25% off with code Jared25. So let me just give you a brief overview. So the first charity has to do with this. This man right here, Meir Tamari, 32, was killed in a terrorist attack, leaving behind a wife and 2 children. So if you can donate to that, please do so. The link is in the description below, like I just showed you. Also, I have this charity, plant 10,000 tree forest in biblical heartland. So I am promoting that as well. Here's the book I was telling you about. They sent me a copy of this, and I've shown it on the channel a couple of times. And it looks like right now they're doing 20% off. So there's that. And then you have my code that you can put in there. But 75 Hebrew words you need to understand the Bible. So you might consider doing that. And then lastly, Artza, which is a separate company. They basically take all these different small businesses and take their products and put them together in bundles and then ship you a bundle every so often. I think it's like once a month. I'm not entirely sure about that actually, but anyway, it's these small businesses that do all these different types of products and stuff like that. They put it in a bundle, and each box, it has a different theme. So for example, there's a Nazareth box, a Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Galilee, and there's actually other ones too. They updated their website, but they have these different boxes that they send out. They even have a Christmas box, and I was really happy about that one because it came with a couple Christmas ornaments made from wood from olive trees in that area, and they're really cool. So anyway, just so you know, there's these different things that you can support or purchase for yourself. Remember that I have these different codes, and it's in the description box. Okay. Now, before we get into anything else, here is the Flood the Earth Challenge, where we're sharing the Book of Mormon. I haven't updated it yet. We're at 6,609 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared, and 708 people that have joined the challenge. We're trying to get to 1,000 people as a goal that have joined this challenge, and then a total of 10,000 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared. And the channel goal is for each person to share at least 10 copies of the Book of Mormon. So please consider doing that if you haven't already. If you've already shared the Book of Mormon, try and get to 10, and then just let me know in the comments or send me an email. Use this right here, type #flood or just the word flood, and it helps me find your comment or your email. Okay, and before we get into Ezekiel, I have an update, a new disaster, and this time it's London. Yes, London, the capital city of the United Kingdom. Flooding. This is something that was actually on my radar yesterday. Yesterday is the day that I started to record the video that I put, or sorry, okay. Let me get my timeline straight. Okay. So on the 20th, I started to record the video about the New Jerusalem and Salt Lake City. And I was going to talk about this flooding, but there wasn't a whole lot out there about it. And so I initially talked about it. I did the video and then messed up. And so I just trashed it and then recorded it the next day. Now we have updates, and this did in fact take place. So with this share, or whatever you call these now, this post on X from FPL Akshay, it says, London is well and truly flooding. I've never seen anything like this. Emergency services everywhere were driving. And it shows, a picture of him driving. Let's look at a few more pictures and posts. Okay. You can see this. This is not in London. This is in a place called Swansea. I think that's how it's pronounced. But there was serious flooding there. There were roads that were closed because of the flooding. This is flooding in East England. This guy down here was, this was supposed to be in North London. So this is East London, and it looks like it's some kind of shopping mall or shopping area. Sarah Kern says, wasn't sure whether to #run or swim around the streets of West London early this morning. So West London, North London, East London. Heavy rain leads to flash flooding in London. And there you go. Some more video. Okay. Between the Maxie's rat, I don't know what that means, Peckham in general, and now flooding East London, going out terribly. This one says, heavy rain on the 20th caused flooding, NW10 Victoria Road, London. And that's it. So this is my newest entry on the spreadsheet. There was actually a few days in between this and the last disaster or disasters in India, South Carolina, the UK, in another location, Iran, and Spain, and Nigeria. There was a 3-day space in between these 2 days, which for this month is kind of unusual because almost every single day there has been some new report of mostly flash flooding that turns the streets into raging rivers, sweeping away cars, people, and dumpsters and other things. It's almost been every single day. So we had a little bit of a pause, and then this just now. So we'll just have to see. Hopefully no more for a while. But this is the latest casualty: London, Swansea, and North Hertfordshire, if that's how that's pronounced. So I put it on Google Earth, and this is the affected area, stretching all the way from Wales into London. Okay, so again, all this flash flooding all across Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, in Israel, in Gaza, India, China, and South America, and Brazil, and then mostly the eastern United States, Massachusetts, Atlanta, Georgia, and Charleston, South Carolina. all just this month. Oh yeah, can't forget this either. Nigeria, that area, and then South Africa. So pretty much all around the globe. The only continent that we're missing is Australia and Antarctica. Okay, so that's the update on that. Here's the different news stories I've used to verify it. I always verify before I put it on the map. Torrential rain across London left streets flooded, with firefighters working tirelessly throughout Wednesday evening to respond to calls. With heavy rain only set to get worse ahead of Hurricane Nigel. Oh yeah, by the way, I forgot about that. Let's go to Zoom Earth. Let's see what it looks like right now. So this is Hurricane Nigel. So it's not going to make landfall or anything like that in Ireland or the UK. But of course, it's going to add to the rain, it would seem. Add to the rain that's already fallen so far. The Met office warned of potential flooding and the possibility of interruption of power supplies. London Fire Brigade received numerous calls, quote unquote, over flooding, as dramatic footage showed roads turning into rivers, with crews working as quickly and as safely as they can to provide assistance. So, and then they show some different pictures and stuff like that. All right, London, the newest one on the list. Okay, let's go ahead and let's get into Ezekiel. And what I did is I looked at this chapter in the Institute Manual, Prophecies of the Restoration, which covers Ezekiel 25 to 48, chapters 25 to 48. And I just picked out the ones that would be, I think, of most interest to this channel. So starting right here, this is just an overview of chapters 40 to 44, the vision of a future temple. So this is important. This is talking about the temple in Jerusalem that has not been built yet. In one of the most remarkable visions of the Old Testament, Ezekiel had the privilege of being carried away by the Spirit to the holy city of Jerusalem to behold on the Temple Mount the magnificent temple to be built there in the latter days. So in the Institute Manual, it is saying on the Temple Mount. So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about the BYU Jerusalem Center. I still think that it could be turned into a temple. Maybe it could be used for some other special purpose, but in the Institute Manual, it's saying on the Temple Mount, a magnificent temple to be built there in the latter days. In Ezekiel 40, verse 3, Ezekiel was introduced to a man who subsequently showed him the temple and its measurements. This man, quote unquote, was probably not the Lord, but an authorized messenger. Elder James E. Talmage described the main features of this temple. Quote, in the 25th year of the Babylonian captivity, while yet the people of Israel were in exile in a strange land, the word of the Lord came to the prophet Ezekiel. The power of God rested upon him, and he saw in vision a glorious temple, the plan of which he minutely described. As to whether the prophet himself considered the design so shown as to be one subsequently realized, or as but a grand yet unattainable ideal, is not declared. Certain it is that the temple of the vision has not yet been builded. Yeah, it says builded in case you're listening. I'm not making that up. Builded. In most of its essential features, Ezekiel's ideal followed closely the plan of Solomon's temple. So close indeed is the resemblance that many of the details specified by Ezekiel have been accepted as those of the splendid edifice destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. A prominent characteristic of the temple described by Ezekiel was the spaciousness of its premises and the symmetry of both the holy house and its associated buildings. The area was to be a square of 500 cubits, walled about and provided with a gateway and arches on each of the three sides. On the west side, the wall was to be unbroken by arch or portal. So the west side, that would be like the back of the temple. I pulled this up. Okay. I don't know enough to say if it would at all resemble the style of the second temple, because the first and second temple, they have a lot in common as far as like dimensions, Holy of Holies, the sanctuary, altars, stuff like that. But there are differences in their appearance. For example, Solomon's temple had 2 main pillars in the front, whereas you can see that the second temple looks like they have these 4 pillars. So there's some like differences between the first and second temple. But if we use this just for the visual, right, this way would be east. Here's the Mount of Olives. And then that way would be west. So it's talking about this backside of the temple. Okay, let's read that again. So the area was to be a square of 500 cubits, walled about, and provided with a gateway and arches on each of the 3 sides. On the west side, the wall was to be unbroken by arch or portal. At each of the gateways were little chambers regarded as lodges and provided with porches. In the outer court were other chambers. The entire area was to be elevated, and a flight of steps led to each gateway. In the inner court was seen the great altar standing before the house and occupying the center of a square of 100 cubits. Ample provision was made for every variety of sacrifice and offering, and for the accommodation of the priests, the singers, and all engaged in the holy ritual. The main structure comprised a porch, a holy place, and an inner sanctuary, or most holy place, the last named elevated above the rest and reached by steps. The plan provided for even greater exclusiveness than had characterized the sacred area of the Temple of Solomon. I'm guessing because of those stairs. I'm guessing that's why he's saying that. Because, like, for example, if you go in here, let's just do that really quick. Okay, let's do this. And then with this, you can go into the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies. It just takes forever to get there. I wish you could, instead of walk, run like you can in video games. Anyway, you can see that to go from the sanctuary, this room right here with the menorah, the incense altar, and then the showbread table, there aren't any steps that you go up to get into the Holy of Holies. So I guess that would be one difference. The service of the temple was prescribed in detail. Okay, now this is important. Okay, this is talking about a future temple, like future to us. It has not been built yet. And he describes the services that are going to take place in it. Okay, so this is from Scripture. It's from Ezekiel. The ordinances of the altar, the duties of the priests, the ministry of the Levites, the regulations governing oblations and feasts were all set forth. Quote, the immediate purpose of this revelation through the vision of the prophet appears to have been that of awakening the people of Israel to a realization of their fallen state and a conception of their departed glory. End quote. Okay. Let's see, Ezekiel 40, verses 45 to 60. Let's read that. First, the chapter heading, a heavenly messenger shows Ezekiel in vision a city where the temple is located. Ezekiel is shown the form and size of the temple and its courts. All right, let's go down. Okay. And he said unto me, this chamber, whose prospect is toward the south, is for the priests, the keepers of the charge of the house. And the chamber whose prospect is toward the north is for the priests, the keepers of the charge of the altar. These are the sons of Zadok among the sons of Levi, which come near to the Lord to minister unto him. Okay, so yeah, who is that? Well, it explains in the manual. Who are the sons of Zadok? The heavenly messenger explained to Ezekiel that the Levites who would keep charge of the holy house would be the sons of Zadok. Zadok was a righteous high priest, because you have you have like the three classes basically. You have within the tribe of Levi, you have one basic division between the priests, which were the sons of Aaron, okay, and the Levites, which would be from the rest of the tribe of Levi. And as far as the priesthood goes, they would be the equivalent of teachers and deacons, doing things in the temple, cleaning, singing, teaching, stuff like that. All right. But then the priests would be the ones that would actually work at the altar and work inside the sanctuary, work with the showbread, incense, menorah, so on and so forth. A lot of different things. Similar to how when we look at our chapels today, when you're in sacrament, it's the priests that actually bless and they bless the sacrament and administer it. You have the deacons and teachers that can pass it, right? But it's been a long time. I think teachers can help prepare the sacrament, but they don't bless it. But priests do. It's like in our wards, we have like a mini temple. Comparing it to the Solomon's temple, the second temple, where we have priests that are there at the sacrament table, or you could look at it as an altar with the sacrament representing Christ, the bread and water representing the flesh and blood of Christ, him on the altar, and the priests that would attend to that. And, a visual of that would be this. So this is kind of what I see whenever I think about the sacrament. I see this altar. This is essentially the sacrament table in our wards, right? And so every ward has the Aaronic priesthood, and you have the different quorums, and then they're presided by the bishop, who is the high priest. He's the presiding high priest in the ward, and he's directly over the Aaronic priesthood. So it's very similar to how the temple was kind of structured in ancient times, where you had one high priest, and he was over the priests and the Levites. You see what I mean? All right, so anyway, Zadok replaced Abiathar because of his loyalty to David and Solomon. Zadok was the first high priest to officiate in Solomon's temple. Apparently, the Lord desired the descendants of the righteous Zadok to officiate in the latter-day temple in Jerusalem. Now, obviously, we don't know who that is, but I'm sure that it would be revealed. Among the Jews, they do have Levites and priests, and the way that they know that is by their last name. So if you're descended from the tribe of Levi, you have a last name like Levi, or Levi, or, just like variants of the name Levi. And then if you're a priest, meaning that you're descended from Aaron, Moses's brother, then your last name is usually Cohen, because that's priest in Judaism, Cohen, or Cowan, or Cochran, or things like that. So, and you'll notice that name quite a bit in Hollywood, because there are a lot of Jews that are in Hollywood. So if you look at the credits of any given movie, don't be surprised if you see Cohen. That's a very frequent name that you see in Hollywood. But anyway, so this is something new to me. Did you know that Zadok, I guess at some point his descendants will be identified, and then they will be the ones that officiate in this temple, in the latter-day temple. Okay. So that's kind of interesting. And of course, we don't know all the details of exactly how things are going to go, but this is one big detail, that it's going to be the descendants of Zadok that work in that temple. And the temple that we're talking about, the third temple, it does seem to be this kind of temple that we're looking at right here. Not necessarily the type that we have right now that is specifically made for the ordinances that we do right now. And you might be like, well, you know, burnt sacrifice, that's been done away with. Well, and I know there's occasionally some people that disagree. I don't know why. Because Joseph Smith and Joseph Fielding Smith have clearly said and confirmed what's said in Ezekiel. So first it comes from Ezekiel, and then Joseph Smith and Joseph Fielding Smith confirm it. So it looks like all they have here is Joseph Fielding Smith's explanation, but let me pull up. I better do the other one. I didn't realize that till right now. Let's see, sacrifice, animal sacrifice. Here we go. Okay, so this is in History of the Church. History of the Church, okay? Volume 4, pages 211 to 212, and this is Joseph Smith that's talking. It will be necessary here to make a few observations on the doctrine set forth in the above citation, and it is generally supposed that sacrifice was entirely done away when the great sacrifice, i.e. the sacrifice of the Lord Jesus, was offered up, and that there will be no necessity for the ordinance of sacrifice in the future. But those who assert this are certainly not acquainted with the duties, privileges, and authority of the priesthood or with the prophets. The offering of a sacrifice has ever been connected and forms a part of the duties of the priesthood. It began with the priesthood and will continue until after the coming of Christ, from generation to generation. We frequently have mention made of the offering of sacrifice by the servants of the Most High in ancient days prior to the law of Moses. So this is an important thing to understand. A lot of people think, oh, it was part of the law of Moses. The law of Moses was fulfilled. No. This was going on. This type of sacrifice had been going on since the times of Adam. It is outside the law of Moses, although they did do it in the law of Moses. But this existed just like the Melchizedek priesthood before the law of Moses. So anyway, prior to the law of Moses, which ordinances will be continued when the priesthood is restored with all its authority, power, and blessings. Elijah was the last prophet that held the keys of the priesthood, and who will, before the last dispensation, restore the authority and deliver the keys of the priesthood, in order that all the ordinances may be attended to in righteousness. It is true that the Savior had authority and power to bestow this blessing, but the sons of Levi were too prejudiced. And I will send Elijah the prophet before the great and terrible day of the Lord, etc., etc. Why send Elijah? Because he holds the keys of the authority to administer in all ordinances of the priesthood. And without the authority is given, the ordinances cannot be administered in righteousness. It is a very prevalent opinion that the sacrifices which were offered were entirely consumed. This was not the case. If you read Leviticus, 2nd chapter, 2nd and 3rd verses, you will observe that the priests took a part as a memorial and offered it up before the Lord, while the remainder was kept for the maintenance of the priests, so that the offerings and sacrifices are not all consumed upon the altar, but the blood is sprinkled, and the fat and certain other portions are consumed. You'll note it is talking about actual animal sacrifices. We're talking about blood, fat, portions, cutting it up into two pieces. This is talking about animal sacrifices. Some people that are uncomfortable with the idea will explain this away or be like, well, you're not reading it right, or no, I am reading it right. Blood is sprinkled in fat and certain other portions are consumed. Continuing, these sacrifices, as well as every ordinance belonging to the priesthood, will, when the temple of the Lord shall be built, and the sons of Levi be purified, be fully restored and attended to in all their powers, ramifications, and blessings. This ever did and ever will exist when the powers of the Melchizedek priesthood are sufficiently manifest. Else, how can the restitution of all things spoken of by the holy prophets be brought to pass? It is not to be understood that the law of Moses will be established again with all its rites in variety of ceremonies. This has never been spoken by the prophets, but those things which existed prior to Moses' day, namely sacrifice, will be continued. It may be asked by some, what necessity for sacrifice since the great sacrifice was offered? In answer to which, if repentance, baptism, and faith existed prior to the days of Christ, what necessity of them since that time? Right? And have you ever thought about it that way? It's like Christ came, so is there no more need for sacrifice? Repentance, baptism, and all other things? And because sacrifice was not part of, or it existed before the law of Moses, it would fall into that same class of things. Okay, so the priesthood has descended in a regular line from father to son through their succeeding generations. Okay. I want to read this to you really quick. This is Doctrine and Covenants Student Manual. Okay. Who are the sons of Levi and what is their offering? This is another one that people consistently get wrong. They're like, oh, well, this is referring to the Aaronic priesthood, and now righteousness, the church has been restored, and so now with doing the sacrament and stuff like that, now the Aaronic priesthood is again offering in righteousness. No, that's not what that means. Historically, the sons of Levi, including the sons of Aaron and the sons of Moses, were the custodians of the house of God and were responsible for its ordinances. Today, the Lord promises that men who are called by the Lord to build up my church and who are faithful unto obtaining these two priesthoods of which I have spoken and the magnifying of their calling become the sons of Moses and of Aaron. The Aaronic priesthood is responsible for the preparatory gospel. In the ordinances of the Melchizedek priesthood, including temple work, the power of godliness is manifest. As righteous saints serve the Lord in holy ordinances, including those of the temple, the sacrifice they offer through their service will be part of the offering in righteousness that the sons of Levi, including the sons of Moses and Aaron, will present to the Lord before his coming. So it's partly that, but it is literally the sons of Levi, or the sons of Levi and Moses and Aaron, all three of them. They are going to continue doing what they did before. And now let's go back to this. So what sacrifices will be offered in the temple? So we've already heard from Joseph Smith, right? And then the student manual for Doctrine and Covenants, and now Joseph Fielding Smith. Quote, when these temples, the temple seen by Ezekiel and others to be built in the New Jerusalem, are built. So he's including the New Jerusalem temple as well. It is very likely that provisions will be made for some ceremonies and ordinances which may be performed by the Aaronic priesthood, and a place provided where the sons of Levi may offer their offering in righteousness. This will have to be the case because all things are to be restored, right? Ongoing restoration. It would include this as well. There were ordinances performed in ancient Israel in the tabernacle when in the wilderness, and afterward it was established in Shiloh, in the land of Canaan, and later in the temple built by Solomon. The Lord has informed us that this was the case and has said that in those edifices, ordinances for the people were performed. We are living in the dispensation of the fullness of times, into which all things are to be gathered and all things are to be restored since the beginning. Even the earth is to be restored to the condition which prevailed before Adam's transgression. Now, in the nature of things, the law of sacrifice will have to be restored, or all things which were decreed by the Lord would not be restored. It will be necessary, therefore, for the sons of Levi, who offered the blood sacrifices anciently in Israel, to offer such a sacrifice again to round out and complete this ordinance in this dispensation. Sacrifice by the shedding of blood was instituted in the days of Adam, and of necessity will have to be restored. The sacrifice of animals will be done to complete the restoration when the temple spoken of is built at the beginning of the millennium, or in the restoration, blood sacrifices will be performed long enough to complete the fullness of the restoration in this dispensation. Afterwards, sacrifice will be of some other character. So, I don't know. I've known about this for a while, but it's interesting to think about. It's very interesting to think about. And what's also interesting to think about is the fact that right now you have, let me see, where do I have it? You have the Temple Institute in Israel, in Jerusalem, that have built all the things necessary for temple services to resume, the way that they did at the time of the Second Temple and Solomon's Temple and so forth. They have all the instruments, all the vessels, everything prepared for resuming sacrifices and everything else that they did back then. Not only have they created all the vessels and everything, but they have the Kohanim, that's the plural of Kohen. They have the priests that they've identified that are suitable for temple service, and they practice that. It's been a project that's been going on for something like, I don't know how long, like 10 to 20 years or something like that. But they have been doing kind of like practice rituals. They get together, they learn these things together in preparation for the third temple. And I've done a couple of videos about that. They've done sacrifices, not that it would be for show, to do like a demonstration. Essentially, they've done sacrifices, they've done other things for different Jewish holidays and stuff like that. But they are preparing, right? And when you look at this, you shouldn't be too surprised when you go into the temple, right? This is what priests wear. This is what priests wear in the temple. That's what they wore in the temple in olden days. And yeah, it's very interesting. So I can imagine a scenario when Christ comes and the Kohanim that remain, that were righteous, will accept Christ, recognize him for who he is. And then it may be this group that we're looking at right here, some of them, that may actually be doing those sacrifices in the temple. I don't know. It's just interesting to think about. All right, let's move on. Ezekiel 45, 47 and 48. How will the land be divided among the tribes of Israel? According to Ezekiel's vision of the future, the Holy Land will be divided in strips, running between the Mediterranean Sea on the west and the Dead Sea and the Jordan River on the east. Okay, so let's go here so we can visualize that. Here's the Dead Sea. Here's the Jordan River, this yellow line right here. So strips between the Mediterranean and these bodies of water, which is different from the way that it was divided in the Old Testament. If we go to study helps, sorry, I should have already had this pulled up. We go to Bible maps, and then we go to the division of the 12 tribes. This is what it looked like. It wasn't strips. For example, the only tribes that bordered the Dead Sea were Judah, Benjamin, a little bit of Ephraim, maybe a tiny bit of Gad, and then Reuben on the east side, right? And Simeon, Reuben, Benjamin, Ephraim, Gad, this half tribe of Manasseh on over here, Issachar, Zebulun, and Naphtali and Dan did not touch the Mediterranean. So it's going to be radically different than how the land was divided before. It's going to be strips according to this. So each of the 12 tribes will be given a strip of land with a strip out of the middle for the prince, the city, and the Levites. That is the priests. And I'm assuming when it says prince, he's talking about, this is talking about the Messiah, Christ. Joseph will receive a double portion since Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph's sons, both became tribes in Israel. We already know that. The city will have 12 gates, one for each tribe, including Levi, and one for Joseph. So I'm guessing, so in this case, when we're talking about gates, there's not going to be like an Ephraim and Manasseh gate. There's going to be a Joseph gate, and Levi will have a gate. Otherwise, you would have 13 gates. If you included Ephraim, Manasseh, and Levi, then it would be 13. But it's going to be 12 gates. Ephraim and Manasseh will have the Joseph gate. On the north will be the tribes of Reuben, Judah, and Levi, which as soon as I read that, that struck me as odd because it makes me think about the way that Israel camped around the tabernacle in the wilderness. And I've talked to Rabbi Gerfein about this. I'm sure some of you have seen those videos. And the Jews place great importance on where they were camped. And rightly so. It makes sense. There were 4 groups of 3, and each group had a leader tribe. So for example, on the east, it was Judah. In the north, it was Dan. In the south, it was Reuben. On the west, it was Ephraim. And that's also how they did the order of march, right? Judah, Reuben, Ephraim, Dan up here. And then the other tribes in their group down here. And then they marched this way. And actually, let me pull this up. Let me go to Judaism, 12 months. Oh, that's nice. It's not showing up. Let me refresh, see if that helps. Yes, it helped. And I do think that this is probably a correct thing, even though this isn't our doctrine per se. This is how the Jews view it, how they have each tribe match up with a month of the year on the Hebrew calendar. So Judah would be first with Nisan, the month Nisan. Zebulun would be Iyar, right? And so you basically, if you look at it this way, if you think about the order of March, you have Judah that brings in spring, Reuben that brings in summer, Ephraim that brings in fall, and Dan that brings in winter. So that makes perfect sense to me. It's not our doctrine, but I wouldn't be surprised if that is actually true, and that's why the Lord had it that way. Okay, so anyway, so what you'll notice here, so on the north will be Reuben, Judah, and Levi. Whereas when you compare that to how it was here, Reuben was on the south, Judah on the east, and Levi was not camped around the tabernacle the same way that the other tribes were. Levi was broken up into 4 groups, one on the north, one on the east, one on the south, one on the east, right? So anyway, it doesn't correspond with how they camped around the tabernacle, but we are talking about the city and we're talking about gates. But I wonder what kind of insights we could learn about that in the future, or maybe from the Jews. I don't know. But it is by revelation. It's all by revelation, so it has meaning. Just don't know what the meaning is. Kind of understand the meaning of this being the months of the year and time and stuff like that, but in the future with Jerusalem, I don't know. So on the north will be the tribes of Reuben, Judah, and Levi. On the east will be Joseph, Benjamin, and Dan, which that's interesting because you have Joseph and Benjamin, which are full brothers because they're both sons of Rachel. And then Dan. And then on the south will be Simeon, Issachar, and Zebulun. On the west will be Gad, Asher, and Naphtali. Jerusalem will then be called the Lord is here. Jehovah Shammah, see Ezekiel 48:35. And actually, we're going to read that right now because I can't remember if it's going to bring it up in the manual, but there's a Joseph Smith translation for that. So down here it says, it was round about 18,000 measures, and the name of the city from that day shall be Lord is here. Or sorry, Lord is there. But in the Joseph Smith translation it says, and the name of the city from that day shall be called Holy, for the Lord shall be there. So it's not going to be for the Lord shall be there, but it shall be called Holy, which makes sense because if you think about, where is it? If you think about it in this sense, I'm sure that most of you know that one of the names or title of God the Father is Man of Holiness. You see this right here. See also Father in heaven, God, Godhead, Son of Man. It says another name for God the Father, Man of Holiness. And then if we go to Moses 6:57, wherefore teach it unto your children that all men everywhere must repent, or they can in no wise inherit the kingdom of God. For no unclean thing shall dwell there or dwell in his presence. For in the language of Adam, Man of Holiness is his name. And the name of his only begotten is Son of Man, as in Son of Man of Holiness, even Jesus Christ, a righteous judge who shall come in the meridian of time. So you have God the Father, Man of Holiness. You have the Son, which is the Son of Man of Holiness. And then on top of that, in Moses 7, it says here, and Enoch continued his preaching in righteousness unto the people of God. And it came to pass in his days that he built a city that was called the City of Holiness, even Zion. So that would make sense, right? When as part of the second coming, the City of Holiness, Enoch's City of Holiness is going to join with the new Jerusalem, which I would assume would maybe take on the same name because they're joining together. I don't know. But then in Jerusalem, the old Jerusalem, its name is going to be changed to Holy, which I think is basically the same thing as this, City of Holiness. So you would have the two world capitals, and they're both called holy, essentially. So it makes sense. Okay, let's continue. There will be a gathering there of the scattered tribes of Israel, and the temple that Ezekiel saw in vision will be central in location and function in that gathering. Regarding the inheritances of Joseph's descendants in the Middle East, Sperry commented, quote, of interest to the Latter-day Saints is the fact that provision is made for the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. It is quite evident from Ezekiel's vision that not all of Joseph's descendants are to have their inheritance on the American continent, as some of our people have supposed. We may be justified in believing, however, that most of Joseph's seed will be provided for on this land, but Ezekiel very obviously implies that some of Joseph's descendants will dwell in Palestine. So, and I think that maybe all of that is maybe a little bit of an oversimplification because, yes, there's going to be land divided here. But obviously, in the course of the millennium, Israel is going to fill the earth. It basically already does fill the earth. And there's not going to be a general gathering to Israel or to the New Jerusalem. There is a gathering to Israel, right? That was essentially initiated by Orson Hyde, dedicating the land for the return, but not all Jews are going there. Although half of the Jews, like roughly half of all Jews in the world, live in Israel, and the other half are still scattered throughout the world. So there is a general gathering, and then there is basically a gathering between North and South America, where the majority of church members in these two continents are most likely Ephraim and Manasseh, right? But obviously, I don't think that you're going to be restricted in the millennium from moving to, say, you want to move to Africa, or you want to move to Russia, or you want to move to Palestine. So it seems that there's generally going to be these areas, that North and South America will be recognized as Joseph's inheritance. And then you have these other strips of land for the 12 tribes, but I'm sure that you can live wherever you would like, just like you can today. I haven't heard of anything that says that people will be restricted to a certain area. But in general, those are the lands given to those different tribes, and maybe even more will happen. Maybe Africa will be divided. Of course, all the continents are going to come together. It's going to be one massive supercontinent, but maybe the earth will further be carved up. So you'll have North and South America, which will be joined with the rest of the continents, and then maybe other pieces of those continents will be given to different tribes. Who knows? But all that we do know, North and South America for Joseph, and then the land of Palestine or Israel, the land of Canaan, is going to be divided into strips for all the tribes. Okay. Let's move on. Okay, now Ezekiel 47, 1 through 12, water issues from the temple. The prophet Joseph Smith proclaimed, quote, Judah must return, Jerusalem must be rebuilt, and the temple, and water come out from under the temple, and the waters of the Dead Sea be healed. It will take some time to rebuild the walls of the city and the temple, etc., and all this must be done before the Son of Man will make his appearance. End quote. The waters issuing forth from under the temple and the healing of the Dead Sea may occur when the Lord himself sets foot upon the Mount of Olives, causing this mountain to divide in two and create a large valley. So look at that. The manual says that it may be when Christ actually comes that the Dead Sea is going to be healed. Now, there's a symbolic element of the Dead Sea being healed, and they've talked about this in conference, how essentially it represents the blessings of the temple going to a dead world. All of us being spiritually dead, but by partaking of the ordinances and covenants of the priesthood, we can be healed, because of Christ. Well, it seems that there is also the literal aspect. So keep this in mind. If you're like, well, we can't even, Christ can't come yet because the Dead Sea hasn't been healed. I wouldn't be so sure, because it could be right when he comes, according to this manual put together by the church, and having gone through the correlation process where they make sure that everything's doctrinally sound. Or, as some of you know, I have done videos about the Dead Sea and interesting things that have been happening within recent years. This article is from January 12th, 2020. Prophecy appears. Rivers flow from Jerusalem into the Dead Sea. I know it says from under the temple, but maybe it could mean from the location of where the temple will be. I don't know. You can be really strict with it, and maybe that's how it'll be. Or maybe it could be like this, just coming from where the temple will be whenever it's dedicated. Rain fell for 2 weeks in Israel, breaking a 50-year record for the highest amount of precipitation in northern Israel on Thursday, according to the Israel Meteorological Service. A record was also broken in southern Israel, where, according to the Meteorological Service, 5 inches fell, breaking a 76-year-old record. Okay, so you have this, and I'll put the link for this article in the description below. But there's all these different videos you can watch of rivers flowing to the Dead Sea from Jerusalem. Okay. Also, it's not just that. Okay, Ezekiel's end of days vision revealed Dead Sea coming to life. And what you see here are fish. You see the fish right there? Fish. Okay, so let's read about it. For those who have visited the lowest point on the face of the earth, Ezekiel's end of days prophecy of the Dead Sea coming to life seems impossible. Yet, recently, scientists have been shocked to discover that the sinkholes appearing around the sea are quickly filling up with fish and other forms of life previously unseen in the inhospitable region. Known as the Dead Sea in English because of the hypersaline environment and scarcity of aquatic life, Israeli photojournalist Noam Bedain of the Dead Sea Revival Project says that the term Dead Sea, quote, a political term used mostly by the Romans, is a misnomer. The Dead Sea is anything but dead, he said, calling it the 8th wonder of the world. I'll say Bedain because that's how it's like Rabbi Gerfein. Bedain has witnessed fish in Dead Sea sinkholes, microorganisms, growing vegetation, and millions of visitors each year who come seeking life through the body of water's high oxygen levels and special minerals. Indeed, the existence of fish in the Dead Sea, a reality that seems to contradict the laws of nature, has been explained by science and biblical prophecy alike. Quote, 160 researchers and almost every university has something to say about the Dead Sea, said Jackie Ben Zakin, Dead Sea guide and expert on the Dead Sea ecosystem. Sinkholes, he said, are caused by, quote, fresh water running underground, meeting the sediment layers, and melting them. That's interesting. But this is no scientific miracle, said Bedain. It's a biblical prophecy coming to fruition. Quote, coming to the Dead Sea, the lowest point on earth, you see prophecy coming true, he said. A place that was once cursed in biblical times. Now you can come here to the Dead Sea, explore the sinkholes, and see fish where the water has receded, fulfilling prophecies from Ezekiel, who talked about the land flourishing and blooming when the Jews return, said Bedain. Continuing, he says, the curse is over, and this place and its minerals are now bringing life to people around the world. Others who have witnessed life in the Dead Sea have similarly pointed to prophecy. In 2016, a breaking Israel news story about signs of the Dead Sea coming to life went viral, garnering more than 250,000 views. At the time, the presence of fish and other wildlife in the brackish waters of the sinkholes surrounding the Dead Sea went largely unnoticed by the scientific community. The phenomenon was brought to the public's attention by a remarkable young Jewish immigrant to Israel named Samantha Siegel, who visited the isolated location to meditate. Now, if you're interested, I actually interviewed her. I tracked her down because she has a YouTube channel, and I talked to her about it. We actually didn't talk about it a whole lot. We were talking about a bunch of things with having to do with Jewish life and the Dead Sea too. But we did talk about it, and it was a really good conversation. So I'll put the link for this video in the description below. But this is her right here, Samantha Siegel. All right. Siegel is still connected to the site and continues to see prophecy unfolding in the brackish waters surrounding the Dead Sea. Quote, I still go to the Dead Sea every week. It is the best thing to keep me sane and connected to Hashem, which is the Lord, or the name for like Jehovah. It is a glimpse into another world, I went there for Yom Kippur. If I was going to be praying all day, I wanted to be there where I could see Hashem in front of my eyes. The Dead Sea is an opening into the earth. It's like Mama Earth breaking water before giving birth. It looks so harsh right now, but that is just heaven being coated with a little bit of hell. When Mashiach or Messiah comes and the goodness of creation comes out, it will be pure heaven. If you have the eyes to see it, you can see it happening already. So there are a lot of people that view this as the prophecy being fulfilled, or at least the beginning of it. And then one last thing I wanted to show you. I'm not going to read the article because this video is going long, but there's starting to be flowers and other plants that are showing up in places that they haven't before, along the shores of the Dead Sea. This article talks about a plant that was discovered near the Dead Sea that they didn't know about before. So anyway, things are happening with the Dead Sea, and it's been over the last few years. These are recent happenings. Okay. So let's go back here. So I don't know. And like I've said, I still believe that the BYU Jerusalem Center, although it may not be the temple that Ezekiel saw for sacrifices, it wouldn't be the same dimensions at all. I still think that it could be turned into a temple for possibly administrative purposes, or the first temple in Israel. And then maybe under the direction of Christ, the Ezekiel temple will be constructed at the beginning of the millennium. So you have like a potential temple right now in waiting, and then the temple for sacrifices and all that constructed early on. And so if that's the case, if, like the Independence Visitor Center, if this is actually a temple in waiting, then the rivers flowing from Jerusalem to the Dead Sea could actually be coming from underneath this, right? Because this sits on top of Mount Scopus, which is part of the same ridge as the Mount of Olives. So I don't know. Okay, let's go back here. Skip that because we already talked about it. Jerusalem will be called holy. Okay, we've already covered that. Okay, and that's it. That is it. So interesting things to think about. So just to recap, we've talked about the land being divided between all 12 tribes in strips, with the middle strip encompassing or including Jerusalem and being the strip for the Levites, and Zadok and his descendants will be the ones that officiate in that temple. We talked about how Jerusalem is going to be called holy, probably just, again, city of holiness, something like that. The Dead Sea definitely seems like it's starting to be healed, or something's starting to happen, something that hasn't happened before. We talked about animal sacrifices and the nature of them not being specifically associated with the law of Moses, but preceding the law of Moses, but being included into the law of Moses. And I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, and then the fact that the manual says that the temple will be on the Temple Mount, which I don't doubt that's the case. I don't. Okay. That's going to be it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Consider ordering yourself an Artza box. These are really cool to receive. I was thinking about just like dropping out of the program. I know that some of you have bought these, but I may want to do it again because they send me the new box every time that they come out with a new box, and my family really likes it. especially my daughters. They always snatch up whatever, they snatch it up and they put it up in their room or wear it, because there was like this necklace that was in one of them that has like a little vial of dirt, soil from Israel. So anyway, consider doing that. Consider donating to these charities if you can, or buying this book, 75 Hebrew Words You Need to Understand the Bible. And I'll talk to you guys later.